If you are new to our channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.
We're going to talk about invasive plant species and a few other species that are non-plant that we should definitely touch on.
Right, but we're going to focus on the Wisconsin ones.
And typically the Midwest.
And a lot of these are in other locations as well, not just the state of Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. So first of all, we're going to tell what the name of it is and kind of what's going on with it.
Sure. So the first one, an invasive plant is basically a non-native plant that has been brought here, and it would invade other plants, basically. Brought here either by human, by animal, or by the wind. Right. It's not just a human problem here. Nature also does this as well. And they have a tendency they could choke out other plants or look like other plants and cause issues. Yeah, lookalikes. Mm-hmm. So the first one is hogweed, and it looks like Queen Anne's lace. But the problem is that if you get near it, or if you rub it against your skin, you can get a very terrible rash from it. Similar to what poison ivy might do? I think it's like more of a burning rash. Okay. I've never had poison ivy, so I don't know. Okay. Yeah. So that's the hogweed. So it looks like a much more giant Queen Anne's lace. So if you're unsure of what these look like, you can go to your favorite search engine and type it in and hit the image, and you'll be more than overwhelmed with images of the particular invasive plant in which we are speaking about. But yeah, exactly. But Queen Anne's lace is also an invasive plant, but it's not harmful. So you might see it a lot more than something like the hogweed. So the hogweed is invasive. The Queen Anne's lace is invasive, but the hogweed can burn you if touched, but the Queen Anne's lace does not. Right. And it's I don't think people realize it's invasive because it's just like everywhere. Okay. Yeah. Another one is garlic mustard. Yeah. This is an invasive plant. We've got it back in what I would call the back edge of the woods. It's very prolific. Comes back without any problem at all year after year. Now this is an edible plant. Am I right on this? Yeah. Garlic mustard is edible. It's got a slight garlic flavor to it. It's a leafy green, and people do eat it as like a green. Now, if you're going to eat any of these that we say are edible, be sure you properly identify what the plant is. We are not responsible for you consuming plants that are wrongly identified by you, the person. Mm-hmm. Right. So garlic mustard, a lot of people will talk about it as gardeners, especially more. We've got it in our garden, too. Right, we have it in our garden. It's around. There's a lot of it. It's not harmful to us when we bump into it or touch it or remove it. It just can spread very, very quickly and choke out what we're trying to grow. And it's got a really, if I remember right, and I'm pulling the right plant out, it's got a pretty thick root system that I can see how it can choke out the plants that's nearby. Okay, so buckthorn, this is found a lot in Wisconsin. I know in the Milwaukee area it's more on the northern side of Milwaukee, more north. But this actually gets spread out by birds because birds eat the berries. This is a tree. It's a little tree. It could be a tree. What I would consider a weed tree. It's very. There's really not a specific purpose for what we can find for it. Yeah, but don't eat the berries. Berries are poisonous. The birds can eat them. Okay, but we cannot. Okay. So if you see it and you're like, oh, what is this berry bush? Don't eat any berries that you don't know. There's some trees by my work that there's some berries growing on, and I'm not gonna go over there and give them a taste. So, I would just say that be mindful of that, but definitely pull it out because once it starts to develop, it's harder to pull out. Well, once it becomes a tree, unless you cut it down and put toxicity around it or a poison, you're not going to get rid of it. Mm-hmm. Another one is fescue. Now, fescue is a grass that is purposely grown for farmers for the cattle grasses. It's a very for hay. It's a very thick growing, heavy duty grass that a lot of pastures are seeded with this. There are specific fields that they grow, and this thing can get, and we have it in our garden. It's not a farm only weed. It gets very thick, and some of your lawns may be fescue lawns, so you can identify how thickly dense the actual plant is and how it can spread. But that is considered an invasive species in the state of Wisconsin. Right, and
when you allow it to grow native, it can get 2, 3, 4 foot wide and that high too, with a giant seed pod on with hundreds of seeds that will spread very easily. On the farm, we have this. Where I grew up, we had this in our pastures, and halfway through the summer, we will go through and mow the tops off because those stalks that contain the seed pods actually can pierce and poke into the eyes of the cattle that are feeding. So we remove that portion so the cattle can actually get down to the grassy part of it without endangering their eyesight at all. So that's something that farmers will typically do as well.
Okay. And then, so some people feel dill is an invasive plant. I would have to agree. If you're going to grow dill, I would grow it in a container.
And catch it before it goes to seed.
Catch it before it goes to seed. We started dill in containers.
2011.
And in our front yard area, and we're still pulling dill out. And it was in containers. It just went to seed itself. It really does kind of take over.
Yeah, we've gotten about 2 gallons of clean seed, chaff-free seed from that front yard that we continue to remove. Now we continue to pull out. We leave a few plants for the native butterflies and insects, but we catch it before it goes to seed because it is just so prolific that it will seed so rapidly. We still got, I think, 3/4 of a gallon of seed left in the house that is clean, chaff-free, that we use for pickling and other cooking applications. That we'll never have to buy dill seed again.
Right. We just have a lot of it. White clover, also so if you're walking along the grass and you see these little tiny white pom-pom looking flowers, that's white clover. Bees love it. It is invasive. It's not harmful or anything. It will take over your lawn if it continues to spread.
But clover is a plant in which that is planted specifically as a cover crop in most applications because it revitalizes the soil. It fills the soil with nutrients as the plant grows.
Mm-hmm.
So
but it is
good and a bad.
Yeah, it's a good and bad, and the bees do love it. Mm-hmm. So it's like sometimes with invasive plants, it's like, is it good? Is it bad? What's the situation? But it can take over your lawn if a lawn is a priority for you.
One thing that we've seen a lot on the news, not only in Wisconsin but throughout the country, is wild parsnip.
Yeah, that's another one that it looks like parsnip, but I believe it grows a lot taller than a parsnip, and that's an invasive plant, and it's causing some harm to some ecosystems.
And it can burn you severely when you touch it to your skin or you brush against it, not even knowing what it was if you're hiking or whatever the case is. Mm-hmm. So you want to be aware of that.
So one thing I want to talk about real quick is the emerald ash borer. Now, this is not a plant. It's an insect, and it came over from Asia, I don't know, many years ago.
They believe through shipping crates, not by somebody physically bringing the insect over.
Right. And so what it does is it lays its larvae in the ash trees early in the spring, I believe, and then it basically kills the ash trees.
It burrows into the tree and basically eats it from the inside out. Essentially, is what is occurring here.
Right. And so what happens is that now the ash trees have to get cut down, and they just cut down like 20 trees by my work along the main road, and it's sad because these trees were growing. They were probably at least like 10 years old, and now they're getting.
I believe it's in every county in the state of Wisconsin. A lot of it, once it got over here, then humans helped maneuver this insect around through firewood and other means of transportation.
One thing you can do is just make sure that if you do use firewood, don't move firewood from location to location, so that you keep.
Is there a way to? There's not a way of removing it once the tree has it, correct?
No.
There's some ways of slowing it down or treatment, but there's not a eradication application for removing the emerald ash borer.
No.
Okay. Well, those are some invasive plants and an invasive species that we have in Wisconsin. And whether you're listening here in Wisconsin, in the Milwaukee area, or on podcast replay from around the country, around the world, you probably have dealt or have these particular plants in your area that you need to be aware of.
Okay, the zebra mussel.
Yeah, let's talk about the zebra mussel.
So mussels are little shell.
This is one I've not heard about before.
Okay.
So you're going to have to educate me on this.
So the zebra mussel is from I don't know where it's originally from. I can't recall that right now. But mussels are little shellfish type creatures that
attach themselves to the rocks, right?
Right, to the rocks,
okay.
And then also like a watercraft.
Okay.
So they've spread out, and they're invasive. They choke out this other little mussel that's a native mussel. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but. So if you do have a watercraft, make sure when you pull out of the water that you
transport it from lake to lake or pond to pond, you clean.
Yeah, you clean off any sort of those mussels that are on there.
Thank you for checking out the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener radio show. For more, go to the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com for full-length in-studio video and podcast replay of Season 1. Season 2 underway and added weekly. Tweet us at TWVG Show or hashtag TWVG to be part of the program.